Hey everyone, welcome to the CCI Creative Arts Elective. My name is Jooste, and I'll be taking you through this module which is called Creative Congregation. The overarching theme of this module is creativity and how you can use creativity to really make your Sunday service the best that it can be. We'll be touching on things like the worship team, so the role that the worship team plays, and we'll be looking at also how you can use media to really enhance your Sunday service. And then we'll also be looking at kind of how you can use various creative expressions during key moments in your Sunday service. But before we make a start, let me just say a few things about myself. So my wife, Joanne, and I are part of a church called Grace Generation Church in Northern Ireland in Banbridge. It's an awesome church, and I really recommend you guys come and check it out or come and say hi if you're ever in the area. We got 3 beautiful children. And yeah, we used to live in London for about 15 years. So we did the whole London thing. When we lived in London, actually, we were part of a church there called Hillsong Church. And I was also part of the worship team there. So a lot of the things that I'll be sharing with you guys in this module will just be based on kind of my own experience of being on a worship team. And so I hope you guys find this useful and that there's some stuff that you guys can take away from this one. So let's make a start and let's just jump right into it. I want to start by giving you guys a brief introduction on creativity, and I want to share a story that I found very interesting. It's a professor who, back in the day in 1968, created this creativity test to basically help him select, really clever people for the American space program, which is called the NASA space program. What he did is he actually gave this creativity test to children as well, and then astonishingly found out that about 98% of the children were able to pass this so-called creativity test, but that for adults, they really struggled to pass this test. And as you guys can see on the chart there, for 5-year-olds that did this test, about 98% of them were able to pass this test. And then for 10-year-olds, it kind of dropped down to about 30% were able to pass. And then for 15-year-olds, only about 12% were able to pass. And then for adults, only around 2% were able to pass this creativity test. And I thought it kind of highlighted a really interesting kind of point where why does the creativity seem to fade away, as we get older? Why do adults seem to lose that ability to think creatively, as they go through life? Versus when you look at children, they just kind of have it built in them naturally to think creatively. And it kind of made me think, and kind of wondered, but why is that? And I think, maybe a reason for that could be that if you look at a child, they are usually a lot less self-conscious. They can, if they're in a safe environment, they're just absolutely fascinating how they can think and how they can play. We got 3 children of our own, and and the way they play, the way they do role playing and imaginative play, really is fascinating. But for some reason, it seems like as adults we kind of lose the ability to think like that, to think creatively or to think outside the box. And maybe one reason could be this whole thing around consciousness. That maybe as adults we are just a lot more aware and self-conscious of what people think of us, our own surroundings, our own limitations, whereas a child, doesn't care too much about what people think of them. They're just kind of going for it. But that being said, I want to mention 3 points for you guys that's found in scripture that I think can really help us to hopefully unlock that creative potential inside of us, and kind of help us to be the people that God's called us to be. So the first point is found in Matthew 18 verse 3, which is a very popular piece of scripture, and it's Jesus speaking, and he says, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." And it's a very popular piece of scripture, and there could be so many things we can unpack from that. But one simple thought I want to leave with you guys is that when it comes to creativity as well, perhaps we got to learn to change our thinking. Perhaps we got to learn to see the world in the same way that a child looks at the world, and try and really get that back in our lives, the ability to dream big and not hold back, and don't worry too much about what people think of us, and just be excited again for just dreaming big and kind of think the sky's the limit. So all of those type of things, because if you think back to when you were a child, and people ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's sometimes the most funniest things that come up, but I think we got to learn to be like that again, just to kind of be kind of audacious and just think big. And that could maybe hopefully stimulate those kind of creative juices inside of us again. The second point is found in Hebrews 12, verse 2, and it talks about fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. And this is really to do with, for us, making sure we're conscious of Jesus. We've got the right alignment with Jesus. And, and it's not so much about what other people think of us or the other voices that we hear or allow into our lives, but it's really making sure that we fix our eyes on Jesus. The third point is found in Ephesians 1, verse 23. And it says this: the church you see is not peripheral to the world. The world is peripheral to the church. And I love that, because for us who are part of, building church and, making Sunday services happen, I think if we can grab hold of that fact that, Jesus wants his church to be in the middle of whether it be a society or, a community or the world. And I guess quite literally, if people could look in and look at the church and see how the church do things. And out of that, I think there's just so many things I can get from that. For example, even when it comes to creativity and using creative expressions, using technology, kind of creative tools. I believe that as a church, we should be the ones that really pave the way and don't be afraid to use new things, to think in new ways, and kind of be innovative and explore new ideas. I think we got to really be, in a way, if I can use this term, be trendsetters, set that trend and let kind of people look at the church and go, wow, look at how they are doing things. So I don't think we should be afraid to tap into new things and yeah. So, three things, just wanted to leave that with you guys, that I think can really help us to, to kind of be the creative people that God's called us to be. So the next little segment is we are going to quickly talk about the role of the worship team. So maybe for a lot of you, you might be familiar with, kind of what the worship team does and so forth. But I just wanted to share with you four things that I think, is really important in terms of when it comes to the actual role of the worship team. And the first point is that, they're there to kind of create an atmosphere where people can encounter Jesus. So it's all about, really kind of creating that atmosphere and that environment where people can really, encounter Jesus and you point people to Jesus, in that atmosphere and in that environment. The second point is to really understand that everyone is a worship leader on the team. It's not just the role of the worship leader themselves. Normally someone is given the title. And even though that serves a purpose, that person might be the one kind of, lead the song and so forth. But, I believe that, it really is, in terms of leading the congregation, it's actually the role of everyone on team to help lead the congregation in worship. The third one is, it's all about how you engage with the congregation in terms of the role of the worship team. And I believe that, I believe that you got to lead with your eyes open, kind of, if I can say this practically speaking. I have sort of experienced this kind of firsthand as well. And, when I was in London, and we were kind of taught that, we got to keep our eyes open and really engage with the congregation and, take them on a journey with you and encourage them and so forth. And I can tell you guys that it definitely does not feel natural. It actually feels very unnatural to do that. It's a lot easier just to close your eyes when you're on a platform and be in kind of that worship moment. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think if you guys want to, if the worship team wants to be effective in really leading, then I think it's a really good thing. If people can also learn to kind of lead with their eyes open and really engage with the congregation. But it does take practice. It does take a bit of skill. But yeah, I think that's also a great thing. That's, a good kind of aspect in terms of the role of the worship team. The fourth one is that the worship team provides support during various response moments in the service. So when I say support, it's kind of providing that kind of musical kind of background during key moments in the service. So again, you guys might have sort of experienced this firsthand, and you would have seen how worship teams operate in these moments. But one good example could be during an altar call moment, where there's an opportunity given to people to kind of give their lives to Jesus, and then usually right after that prayer, normally the worship team kind of helps to lift that moment and kind of create this atmosphere and this, of celebration and praise. So just a really good example of, where the worship team kind of gives support during that moment. So that's the fourth point, is, that they provide support. Then I just also want to mention quickly 4 things that I think makes a good worship team. The first one is strong leadership. In a way, it kind of goes without saying, we all know that if we want teams to grow, and if we want teams to be the best that they can be, and to have the right culture and so forth, it does require strong leadership. So when it comes to your worship team, really, really important to make sure that you got people in there that really, feel comfortable leading from the front, and are really good at communicating with the team, and really good at, building the team and creating an environment where the team can grow. And so, yeah, definitely requires strong leadership. The second one is about kind of the heart aspect of the worship team, in terms of what makes a good worship team. So I believe, and if I can say this, I believe that it's excellence above perfection. And what I mean by that is it's not about being perfect. It's not, the worship team is a technical skill-based team. It is about playing a musical instrument and singing, but it's not about being perfect. I think if you can create a culture where, it's okay to make mistakes, and it's really is totally okay. But it kind of needs to come from the leadership to help sort of emphasize that point that, guys, it's not about us wanting to be perfect. By all means, you always want to sound, the best that you can sound. But I believe if you can cultivate a culture of more about excellence, I think, the whole sounding good and the way it should be will kind of come anyway, because a culture of excellence is sort of where people want to give their best and they want to get better at what they do. And I just think it's a lot healthier culture to kind of have on a team. So that's the second point. The third point is about practice. So practice. I can't say that enough. Because it is a skill-based team, and you need to go over songs, and you need to learn to be better at the songs and kind of operate better as a team. It does require practice, and it doesn't just happen naturally and automatically. So having regular practices or rehearsals is very important. The fourth one is to have a structure or a discipline in place when it comes to your practice nights or rehearsal nights, and also the sound check element, which is usually on Sundays. When you kind of check the various sound levels of the instruments and the singers, and how does it sound where the congregation sits and so forth. Really important to have a good structure and a good discipline in place for those things. So 4 things that I think really makes a good worship team. The next bit here is I want to give you guys sort of 10 points about just around rehearsals. So rehearsals is something that's very important to a worship team, and you can also call it your practice nights, or you can call it a team night. I actually love the word a team night because it feels it's very inclusive, and so it's maybe something to think about how you want to call it. But for this example, we can say let's call it's a rehearsal. But the 10 things that I think, is really important for making your rehearsals or your team nights or your practice nights a big success is, number one, again, require strong leadership. I have seen, sort of from my experience, if you have someone that can, that's very confident in leading from the front, knowing exactly what the plan is for the evening, and how they want that to look, and the ability to kind of communicate to the wider team, it is so powerful. And it just helps that, people don't really waste their time. It becomes a place where people want to be. And and it is also just really, really efficient. Strong leadership, very important. Second point is to send out your set list in advance of the actual rehearsal evening. So the set list is what the worship team will use for the Sunday, all the songs that they'll be covering. So just a really good habit and good practice to send it out beforehand, so that the team can get some time to familiarize themselves with the songs and practice it. And then when they come together on the rehearsal night, everyone can kind of sort of just kind of get right into it, and it just helps everyone out a lot. The third one is to think about how often you want these rehearsals. I would recommend weekly rehearsals or practices, and to try and really build that into kind of church calendar. Something like a Wednesday or a Thursday usually works quite well. And also the timing in terms of more like a 7:30 and an 7:30 to a 9:30 time slot does also seem to work quite well. But yeah, quite important just to think, in terms of the frequency, how often do you want this to happen, and also how long do you want it to be. The fourth point is, which is something I think also is a really good habit, is to really make sure you start or finish the night with prayer. It can be so easily done where people just focus straight on their instruments, and the singers do what they do and so forth, and you can kind of lose a little bit about what it's about. But if you have strong leadership in place that can make sure that there's an environment of, as people arrive, we're going to first have maybe a moment of prayer and just really commit the whole evening to God, or you can wrap it up that way as well. But just to kind of work that in, I think is also a really, really good thing. The fifth one is to have a plan for the night. So, if I can give you guys an example, say you have a rehearsal from 7:30 to 9:30. You can typically kind of use the first 30 minutes for prayer, maybe even have a bit of praise and worship, with the team there. Maybe just one person on an instrument kind of leading, the team in praise and worship. You can have, a bit of welcome, moments for new people that came on team and so forth. But that can kind of be your first 30 minutes. And then sort of from 8 o'clock, you can have a teaching moment. So you can have, the musicians go to one area and they can learn something new, like a new skill or something that can help them be better musicians. And the same for the singers. They can go maybe into another area and they can do some stuff around, harmonies and blending and all sorts of things. But definitely, maybe have some teaching moments in there. And then later on in the evening, you can have a kind of looking ahead at the Sunday itself. So I think, having a plan for the night just really helps that you get the most out of that evening. And so I think that's a really good thing. The sixth point is kind of basically two things, is to focus on, something new, but also forward looking and focusing on the Sunday. So if you can build it in where, you can do some teaching moments, I think it's really beneficial for your team, but also then make sure that you leave enough time to go through the set list or the songs for the Sunday and get the team to feel really comfortable about what they're going to be doing on Sunday. The seventh point is really about, the location and kind of where you guys meet. I think, it's very important for the musicians and the singers to kind of all come collectively together in one venue. When I was in London, part of Hillsong, it's a big church and their worship team is a big team and a lot of musicians and a lot of singers, but we still got together we used to call it team nights actually, for the rehearsals. And we used to all come together in one venue, musicians and singers. And it was just a really, really great moment to see that, wow, you're part of this big team. And then later on in the evening, people go and break away into kind of various sessions and kind of work on their bits. But so that's number 7. I believe, it's a good thing to get everyone in the same venue. For number 8, it's about that if your team is so big, when it comes to, say, the teaching moments, then it's probably a good idea to kind of break it out into various sessions. Maybe have the musicians or the guitarists even and the keyboardists, they all go and do their thing, and the singers can all break away and do their thing. So just kind of something practical to think about. Number 9 is about the culture of, inviting new people to team. I'm a firm believer that, your worship team, should be a place or should be a team that grows continuously. And should never, I think, just become a band, if I can use that term. I think, you should always inspire people, even on your team, to be on the lookout for people in their world, in the congregation, that have an interest in music or can sing or can play an instrument, and And, but a lot of the times, those people might not have the confidence in the beginning to feel that they could just go, okay, I want to join the worship team. So it does kind of require that kind of relationship, going out for coffees and just hanging out with them. But ultimately, if you can develop a culture where, it's an easy environment to bring people along to these kind of rehearsal nights, or call it team nights, I think it's a really, really good thing, and it's really good to kind of focus on that. Number 10 is really simple, but it's to have fun. Again, because it can be quite intimidating, because it's to do with skill, and it's instruments, and it's people singing and so forth. At the end of the day, really make sure that there's an environment where people can be themselves, and then don't feel intimidated. In that way, it's going to be easy to bring new people along, and also people are just going to really be themselves. And I believe that you're going to get the best out of your team as well when everyone can just be themselves. So kind of however you want to do that, whether it's, just through your leadership, making sure that they make sure people feel comfortable and just really enjoy being there. And that's also going to make sure that, it will cause people to want to come back as well. So 10 points on rehearsals, or if you want to call it a team night. Hope that's useful. The next little segment is just to talk about the sound check element of a worship team. So this is something that happens normally on a Sunday before the service starts. And if I can say sort of 7 points here, again, that I think is very important for your sound check process. The first one is, again, it requires strong leadership. For this particular one, usually it's someone on the sound desk that kind of leads the whole sound check process, or it could be the worship leader, or another term that we use is a music director. So that's someone else on the platform that can kind of coordinate, the musicians and the singers, and work closely with the sound desk. But really important to have strong leadership in place that can help drive this whole process. The second point is, very important, is to have a structure for your sound check. And a discipline. So, for example, you typically sound check one instrument at a time. It's not a case of that everyone just jump on the instruments and play at the same time, and then they're trying to figure out if they can hear each other and if the sound is okay. But it's usually kind of the sound engineer or the sound person will say, okay, drums go first, and then they do what they do, and if they're happy and the sound engineer is happy, then they move on to the next instrument, and then the next instrument, and so forth. And while that is happening with each instrument, everyone else on the platform stays quiet, and they kind of just show respect and just give them the time to really kind of make sure that everything sounds the way it should sound. The third point is around the singers and your vocals, and is to make sure that they do vocal warm-ups. This is something that, when I was in London, that we did every Sunday, and it's something that it was a little bit new to me when I came on team, kind of, more than, 10, 12 years ago or so, in Hillsong. But once you get used to it, it's like exercise. It's like when you do, you kind of warm up before you go for a run or something. That's exact same principle. It's just that you do that with your vocal cords. And so number 3, vocal warm-ups, very, very important. I'll say this though, if you have singers, and they might think they're not too sure what to do here, there's so much on YouTube about, vocal warm-up exercises. And I honestly would say just to, start with some basic stuff, things that look doable. And see if there's someone that feels comfortable to start leading the team in that, and really just don't worry about even how it sounds or what people think, but just kind of go for it and have fun with it, and I think people will be surprised, how effective those things can be. So good to kind of work that in as well. So the vocals or the singers will do vocal warm-ups before they do their sound check, so on a Sunday morning. The fourth point is to use a familiar song when the musicians and the singers come together on the platform. And the purpose behind that is that the whole goal of the sound check process is that people want to check the sound levels and make sure that they can hear each other. So it's not really about introducing a brand new song and then focusing on this new song, but it's more about focusing on the sound. So just using a familiar song helps people to be confident and sing it confidently and play it confidently. So, it really helps. That's the fourth point. The fifth point is, again, very, very important. The worship team and the production team, they need to work together as one team. It's not a us and them type mentality. That usually the production team or the sound team, they kind of sit on the other end of call it the auditorium. It's very important that they work closely together. Whether, again, if you have a strong leadership in place, you can make sure that there's a good connection between the worship team and the production team or the sound team. Number 6 is that, the whole process, the sound check process, should be very efficient. Once it's familiar to everyone, it really should be, I think, fairly quick. And I'll show you guys a typical example shortly of what a sound check kind of layout or process can look like. But it really should be efficient, and there should be no time wastage. It might feel a bit clunky in the beginning, if it's something brand new and it's new, sort of new equipment, new sound equipment and all sorts of things. It can come across that there's a lot going on, but if you really strip it down to, let's just keep it simple and we'll do one instrument at a time, we'll have a process, we'll have a structure in place, that all helps to ultimately getting to the point where, okay, it's just, it's becoming very efficient. So that's number 6. And number 7 is just, during the whole process that normally takes place on the platform, is to make sure people feel comfortable. It can sometimes be a little bit of an intimidating environment being on a platform, but I think it's so important to really make sure that your team feels comfortable and everyone can just be themselves and they really, grab hold of the reason why they're there, and that people can feel valued and they feel they're part of a team. So again, just something that I think is very, very important. So 7 points on the sound check process. The next sort of bit here is I just want to give you guys a quick example of a Sunday structure for the worship team. So for this example, we are going to assume that the service starts at 10:30 and in the morning. And I just want to show you a couple, all the key things that normally the worship team will have to do before the service starts. So the very first thing is that you have a call time, and that's really just the time where the worship team and the production team all arrive at the same time. So for this example, I've said, let's make it 8:45 in the morning. I will say this, if you can make that call time earlier, the earlier you can make it, in a way, the better, because you're just buying more time to get through all the things that you kind of need to get through before the service starts. But let's assume it's 8:45 for this example. And then your vocals, your singers will go and do vocal warm-ups when they arrive. And they'll go and do vocal warm-ups until about 9:10. At the same time, your musicians will be setting up their instruments on the platform, and they'll start their sound check process, and they'll do that also till about, say, 9:10. The vocal sound check will then happen sort of between 9:10 and 9:20. So the singers or your vocals, they will be warmed up by now, and they'll get onto the platform, and then it's kind of their moment where the sound engineer can work with them. Usually as a group, they sing a song together, usually with maybe one instrument. Again, very familiar song, just to make sure that there's a good blend and they can all hear each other. Then very important is to kind of leave some space for some final adjustments. Now, whether your worship team uses in-ear monitors, or whether you use kind of sort of fallback monitors on the platform, either way, it's important that there's a sort of a moment there where maybe for 5 minutes or so, where the sound engineer can just check with everyone that everyone feels comfortable and so forth. Because a lot of the time, and actually too often, people don't speak up. People might just go, yeah, that's okay, that will do, that's fine. And it's not actually okay. So it is very important to kind of create that culture where there's a bit of a check back process as well. So that's the sort of the final adjustments, running, say, till about 9:25. Then at sort of from 9:25 in this example till about 10 o'clock, you've got time to run through your set list. It does depend on how much time you've got left. Usually there's sort of a end point that you're working towards, like a final cutoff. And so you're kind of working towards that. So depending on how much time you've got left, but usually you should have enough time to run through the set list. What I have sort of found, from experience, is that normally people tend to focus on the kind of the beginning and the end of the song. So they'll start the song, do kind of verse 1, maybe go into a chorus, and then they try and finish the song, or if they have time, they go into the bridge and then they kind of finish. Because a lot of the time you just want to you focus on the transitions between the songs, and just make sure that the team can carry that well. So because the songs aren't always in the same key, so they just kind of want to run through those bits. And then sort of, do that up until 10 o'clock, run through the set list, and then sort of, I'd say 20 past 10. So about 10 minutes before the service starts, get your team back, do a team huddle, do a team prayer. If there's time, run through the set list again, kind of just talk through it. And then, just get a couple of people to pray and really kind of commit the service to God, and kind of really help make sure that there's this kind of right, sort of atmosphere and right attitude before people go onto the platform. And then I say sort of at 10:25, usually there's a pre-roll or a pre-service video that I guess nowadays many churches kind of have that, but it's a great tool to kind of give the worship team an indication of when they got to be on the platform. So you've got that all happening. The worship team and your musicians, your singers usually get onto the platform at a certain point in time, and they're kind of ready for the service to start. And then that's the service in this case starts at 10:30. So that's just kind of really a high level example of all the various activities that kind of happens before the service starts for a worship team. The next bit here is I just quickly want to give you guys also a quick overview of a typical set list structure. It's very important to really make sure that there's a lot of thought and even prayer put in the set list. The set list is the songs that you guys want to do on a Sunday. For this example, I've kind of mentioned I've called it song 1 to song 6, and I just want to give you guys a bit of a flavor of the role of each of these songs during the service. So song 1 and song 2 is what I would call typically up-tempo songs. It's the start of the service. You really want to get the congregation going, and it's usually your typical kind of praise songs, a lot of energy, and a real fun environment. And so that's sort of like your song 1 and song 2. Song 3 and song 4 is where you kind of slow down the tempo, and it's a bit more kind of your typical kind of worship songs. Really kind of you're creating this incredible atmosphere of worship. So song 3 and 4, usually a lot slower. Then there's an MC moment. The MC is the person that comes on and kind of give all the announcements, and they can even maybe give the tithes and offering message and so forth. So when that happens, usually the worship team is still on the platform. Musically, they've just kind of really backed down. Usually you've got someone on the keyboards, kind of still playing kind of gently in the background, just to still kind of keep that atmosphere there. So you've got the MC moment, and then after that, you've got what I call song 5. This is your song before the preach. And usually, this is just sort of from my experience, but it doesn't have to be this way, but it's usually just a chorus or a bridge of a song. So what happens is when the MC moment happens, the congregation, usually kind of sits down, for that. But then when song 5 comes, which is the song before the preach, they kind of get the congregation back up on their feet again. So, it could be an up-tempo or a slow-tempo song. It doesn't really matter. But, so that's the song before the preach. The congregation is then already up at their feet. And then you've got the person bringing the message that can then also come onto the platform after that song. Then there's what we call an altar call moment, that's usually a time in the service where you kind of allow time for people to kind of make their peace with God and commit their lives to Jesus. What's very important is to really make sure that, again, from experience for me, is to make sure the worship team is on the platform before that moment happens, to really help support that moment musically, and to help really build and lift the atmosphere. So you've got your altar call moment, your musicians or your worship team's back on stage, and right after the prayer normally. So usually there's a prayer as well. It's just a really good thing if the worship team can help lift that by maybe going back into the chorus or a bridge of one of the songs that they did previously. And then song 6 is what I call the kick out song. That's your final song of the service. And, usually this is a typical kind of up-tempo, high-tempo song. A lot of energy. You kind of want to leave the service, on a high, and just kind of really, again kind of create that real atmosphere of praise and celebration. But yeah, that's kind of song 6. But yeah, so that's an example of a set list structure. I just wanted to give you guys this example. You can obviously have a lot less songs than this. It does depend on how much time you have, but just really important to I guess put some thought into this and think about the type of songs and the purpose behind each of those songs for your Sunday service. So hope that's useful. And right, just to kind of close off this kind of first topic about the worship team, I just want to mention 4 things for you guys again, just to kind of reiterate this. The first one is to really have a culture of excellence and not perfection. So we spoke about, previously just that it's not about being perfect, that it's actually okay to make mistakes. But I think it's more important to really have a culture where people have the right heart, the right attitude. And if you have a culture of excellence, I believe that people would want to bring their best anyway, and they want to get better in their craft and in what they do. The second point is to invest in your worship team. So it's to really place value on them. Typically if you have a team night or a rehearsal night, to really make sure that you allow for some teaching moments as well, to teach your musicians something new, for your singers, try and teach them something new and really make them feel valued. And also, encourage your team to try and, for them, to try and get better at their own craft, in their own spare time. So encouragement goes a long way. The third point is to have a good structure and a plan for your rehearsals or your sound checks. Really, really important to make sure that there's a structure or a plan in place for those things. And then the fourth one is just to, as a final thought again, to really realize that everyone in the worship team is a worship leader, and that confidence is absolutely key for really engaging the congregation. And those are things that, I think that can, really be worked on in the worship team. And if you create a culture and an environment where people can learn those things, it's so valuable. Just want to, that's pretty much it, guys. So that's the end of the first topic of this module. So this was all about the worship team. So for the next one, we'll quickly be looking at how you can use media to basically enhance your Sunday service. You guys would have all heard this statement, it's better at the big screen, and that's something that you hear, sort of when it comes to the movies and so forth. And I guess, what that means is that a movie is just, better at the big screen. Everything is bigger. The sound is better, so, and I guess sort of the experience is better. If I can sort of say, if I kind of connect that to kind of church, and link it to kind of the use of media and the use of screens, in a way, the same principle kind of applies as well. If you effectively use a screen or a big screen in church, it can really enhance your Sunday service. But it definitely is not about the flashing lights and the gizmos and all the fancy stuff that goes around that. We all know that. But media can definitely be such a useful tool, a real valuable tool for your Sunday services if you use it in the right way and if you have the right heart behind it. If you think about it, I think most people in the congregation will respond to a video, or an image, something that can really move them. And maybe many of you have had experiences like that, where you've sat in, you've been in a Sunday service and, your eyes were kind of fixed to a big screen and you were really moved by a video or something that was shown on this screen. And so it definitely is a very powerful medium, if used in the right way. So I want to say this, when it comes to using things like media for your Sunday services, I think it's definitely important to have you can call it maybe a creative department or a separate team of people that know how to work with videos and do the editing and graphics and maybe even lighting and sound, everything that kind of goes around with that, because it is such a skilled area, and you do need people with that kind of skill set if you want to be really kind of efficient in that. So definitely think about having a separate team and almost get the people with the right skill sets to be a part of that team. Another thing when it comes to media is, I think that's a good quality is just to, to remember that it's about detail. I kind of say that attention to detail is key. And just to give you a simple example, if you want to put an image on a big screen during your Sunday service, but suddenly during the service you can see that the image is all pixelated, so it's kind of fuzzy, it's just not that clear and crisp. That's something that could have been avoided if you've just kind of tested that beforehand and kind of really have that kind of attention to detail approach. And the same can be said for anything that you put on the big screen, whether it be text or scripture or anything. So really attention to detail is key. A couple of examples of how you guys can use media for your Sunday service. The first one is just simply, using the big screen for a pre-service video. This is something that's becoming very popular in churches, and I think it's a really, really effective tool something that you can use before the service starts. It might even have a countdown timer, and it kind of helps the congregation to kind of be engaged and to be sort of anticipating that something's about to happen. And so a pre-service video is a really great use to use media with that. Then you can use your big screen or your screen in church for your song words. Very, very popular and common kind of use of that as well. And kind of everything that kind of goes around how you get your song words on your screens, and how you want it to look, and the color and the size of the words itself, all that. There's a lot of kind of sort of detail and thinking that needs to go into that as well. Then you can also use your screen, or call it your big screen in church, for giving some extra information on the tithes and the offering element of your service. So, many times you might want to just give people some additional information of how they can actually give. And so that's really a kind of another example. Then you can also use your screen when there's the MC moment. You can actually, and they talk about kind of sort of the prayer requests and the praise reports. You can actually, I've seen this being used as well, where you can use your screen where they can actually show all the kind of prayer requests, that they might know of, in the life of the church, or even praise reports. They can kind of sort of portray that on the big screen, whether it be kind of like moving text or something. You don't give people's names next to it, but it's just a nice kind of way for the congregation to kind of see, these are things that we're praying for in the life of the church. And also for people to kind of get inspired and stirred up in faith when they see all the good praise reports as well, that, God did these things in people's lives. It's just a kind of a visual example of another thing, how you can use a screen. Then also very, very popular and common example is to use the screen or the big screen for your scripture during the preach moment, in the service. So those are just a few examples of how you can use media during your Sunday service. Then just to kind of give you guys a couple of kind of key points, just to sort of wrap up the whole media and using it for your Sunday service. I'd say the first point is to don't underestimate the power of using media such as videos and imaging or images during your service. It does take a lot of effort and certain skill to put those things together, but it can be so effective and really powerful for your Sunday service. So really don't underestimate that. The second point is, definitely look at doing something like a pre-service video or something that you can use before the service starts. I think it just adds a nice flavor and touch to your Sunday service. And it helps the congregation to kind of come together and be engaged and kind of be expectant for something's about to happen. So that's kind of before your service starts. And then another point is maybe to think about, when your service comes to a close, to also portray maybe just a beautiful image on the big screen or on the screen as the service comes to a close. Nowadays we see this, many churches use the kind of welcome home sign on their screens as a welcoming kind of sort of moment and sign. But maybe likewise you could do something similar towards the end of your service. So whatever you want that to be, but just a nice kind of touch. The fourth point is when it comes to media, I really believe that original content is better than copying from someone else. If I can sort of refer to YouTube, we all know YouTube very well, and there's incredible content on YouTube if you really look for it. And we can get some great ideas from YouTube. And it's also so easy to grab a video from there and say, okay, I'm going to use that video for my Sunday service, or so forth. But I want to almost challenge you guys to really focus on almost like original content. So if you want to put some background music together for your service, work with your worship team. Work with the musicians and see if they can come up with some ideas. If you want to put a video together, again, work with people that have the skill set to kind of do video editing and kind of recording and so forth. And just kind of almost put the challenge out there for yourself to, just to kind of really go for it and try and sort of apply, I guess, your own kind of creative touch to things. So that's the fourth point. And the fifth point, when it comes to media, in terms of all aspects of media, don't be afraid to propose any new ideas to your fellow leaders and your pastors. Media can be sometimes quite overwhelming as there's so many aspects to it. But if you have an idea, if you have a maybe even a vision of what you want something to look like, don't hold back. Don't be afraid to mention that to the people that you do life with and your leaders and your pastors, and take them on a journey with you. And then the final point on media, again, because it can be maybe quite overwhelming sometimes, and you've got lighting involved and you've got flashing images, maybe even in videos and all sorts of things happening. Really make sure you keep Jesus at the center of it all. If I can use this example, if I don't know if you guys have ever been at a Hillsong conference, or maybe even seen a Hillsong conference, the footage and so forth, but they use screens and sound and lighting so effectively, but they ultimately really make sure that Jesus is the center of it all, in whatever they do, and whatever imaging that they use and so forth. So it really all kind of serves a purpose, but they keeping Jesus in at the center is really what it's all about. So coming to the next segment of this creative congregation module, this is called creative expressions in response moments. So I just quickly want to just kind of give you guys some examples of how you can use creativity during certain key moments in your service, in your Sunday service. First of all, I'd say that, when it comes to creative expressions, we shouldn't just be limited to using music and maybe even videos and images. And so it can be, it can go far beyond that. It could be things like having dance or act, drama or the spoken word. I really believe that the options are kind of, endless. There's so many other forms of kind of creative expressions that you can tap into. And I think the key is kind of to look at your congregation and look at what you've got to work with. You might find that you've got people that are passionate about dancing or passionate about acting and doing drama. Form teams around those people, and see if you can, get them to play a part in your Sunday service. When it comes to sort of using creative expressions during certain key moments in your Sunday service, I want to give you guys sort of two examples of how you can use that, use a creative expression. And the first example is quite simply, if you think, during a year, you might have certain kind of calendar events, or you've got the Easter service, you've got your Christmas kind of service. You could typically look at maybe using your dance group, your drama group or acting group to kind of do a play for those specific services to really help emphasize the message. It's just a really kind of, it's a beautiful way to kind of use creativity to help, express the message and so forth, and emphasize the message. So you can almost call it like it's an illustrative service or something. Now, it doesn't need to be limited just to those kind of calendar events. You can bring that in on any service. You could typically even work with the pastor or the person that needs to give the message and ask them if they need some help to help illustrate a certain point in their message. And it might be that they want a certain song to be played, so your worship team can actually sort of do that song, or they want maybe maybe an acting piece to be performed, or something. So it's really good to really I guess kind of be mindful that you can use creativity in various forms during a Sunday service. The other example I want to give you is just that when it comes to your altar call moment, or the kind of that point in the service where people can make their peace with God, and you're giving people the opportunity to kind of give their lives to Jesus. I think it's just such a nice touch if your worship team's already on the platform and kind of providing that musical kind of background or atmosphere during that moment. And then typically after the prayer, the worship team can really help lift the moment and kind of create an almost like an atmosphere of celebration and praise. But it's just a practical example. And I guess that if you talk about the creative expression in that, is your worship team is a creative team, and they are mindful of that moment, but it does take a bit of organizing and making sure that they know exactly when to be on the platform, and ideally before that moment starts, and then they can just provide the support during that moment. So yeah, just kind of two kind of real basic examples of how you can use creativity during certain key moments. And just to quickly give you guys a couple of sort of high-level points again on using creative expressions during, call it, response moments or key moments in the service. First of all, as a creative team, or as a creative, learn to sort of think outside the box. Creativity is not just limited to music or videos or art or so forth. I think it's potentially endless, but kind of learn to be on the lookout for the various forms of creative expressions. And as we mentioned before, maybe develop even an acting or a drama group and a dance group. I think, that can be a really, really good, sort of, I guess, outlet, and could be really good to add those type of teams to your service as well. Number two is to, really work closely with your fellow leaders and your pastors when you have ideas. Don't be afraid to share your ideas with them. And if people don't understand your ideas, take them on a journey with you. Don't give up, and find ways to build relationship with your fellow leaders and your pastors, and really take them on this journey with you. And then the third point, again, just to kind of as a recap, is that your worship team, the role that they play is more than just kind of leading worship at the beginning and the ending of the service. They also provide kind of musical support, where required during the service. And one very good example is kind of when you have your altar call moment, or that point in the service where you're giving people opportunity to give their lives to Jesus. The worship team can play a really, really beautiful part in that moment as well. So we're coming to an end here of this module, which is called Creative Congregation. And I hope that, some of the stuff that kind of I spoke about so far, that kind of made sense to you guys. And, maybe there's a few things that kind of resonate with you. But yeah, just if I can kind of try and wrap it all up again for you guys, I just want to leave you guys with these points. The first point is that, I really believe that the church does not need to be boring. The church can be an exciting place. It can be a place that attracts people and people want to be a part of it. And, as us as creative people, we have this incredible privilege to try and use various creative expressions to make the church fun and relevant, if I can say that as well, and really help the congregation to engage with the message, and to really, we all know that it's about creating an environment where people can encounter Jesus, but there are loads of different ways that we can kind of go about helping to create that environment. So it definitely does not need to be boring. The second point is, invest in your creative teams, really place value on them. And I believe if you do that, then your teams will just become better, and people would want to be a part of that team as well. And you'll just get the best out of your creative teams. The third point is, don't be afraid to try something new. Be open-minded as a creative person. Try and explore other kind of forms of creative expressions that you can use to try and make the Sunday service the best that it can be. The fourth point is, I guess I just want to say this again, that we all have the ability to be creative, because we've been made in God's image, and He's the ultimate creator. So really just grab hold of that. Just because you don't play an instrument, or you don't sing, or you don't draw, that does not mean that you don't have a creative bone in your body. If you think back to the kind of the short story that I shared in the beginning, about that kind of creativity test, about, so many children were able to pass that. But then as we got older, adults kind of struggled to pass that test. I think there's something else at play there. And so I think we all just need to kind of really grab hold again of that fact that we can all be creative. We all have the ability to kind of think outside the box and use kind of various creative talents to, really build God's church. Then the fifth point is, I want to talk about the word trend. The word dictionary gives this definition of the word trend, and it says that it's a general direction in which something is developing or changing. And I love that because I think, again, for us as creative people, I think we got to be in tune with kind of where the culture is at and where things are going. And I think if we can find a way also to bring that, sort of cultural changes into church as well, I think it can be very exciting. And it can be challenging as well, because we tend to get very comfortable with just what we know. But I believe, in like it says in Ephesians, that the church, is not peripheral to the world. The world is peripheral to the church. So it sort of kind of connects and ties up with that point, that the church can be a place that kind of sets the trend, and and I guess within that, we as creatives have to sort of get good at helping to be able to change the direction if we need to be able to change the direction. So, and then the final point, as creatives, as I said this before, we have this tremendous privilege to help create environments and spaces and places where people can encounter Jesus, and that is a tremendous privilege. And and there's so many things that we can tap into and explore and use to kind of help create those environments. But ultimately, it is about making sure that people can encounter Jesus, and we want to point people to Jesus, and we want to use whatever we can to ultimately make Jesus famous. So hope that's useful for you guys. That is a wrap on this module. And guys, enjoy the rest of the CCI Academy. If you guys have any questions on this stuff, by all means, just reach out to me. I'll make sure you guys get my contact details. And if you're ever in the Banbridge area, come and check out Grace Generation Church. Come and say hi. It'd be great to meet you guys. But that's it, guys. Hope it was useful, and take care. We'll chat soon again. Bye-bye.